Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Curious XX, a podcast where we celebrate brilliant and inspiring women who are carving remarkable paths in STEM. I'm Adya,
And I'm Dia.
and today we are absolutely delighted to have an extraordinary guest with us, Dayoung Yoon.
Dayoung is a published author in the field of data analytics with a book that walks readers through the real world steps of data analysis, shaped by her years of experience as a product manager at some of Korea's leading e commerce companies. She's also a proud alumna of Sogang University, one of Korea's top 5 institutions known for cultivating change makers.
But what truly sets Dayoung apart is how she bridges the world of tech and art. Outside of her professional career, she's a passionate filmmaker, an international award winning screenwriter, and a content creator. It is rare to find someone who balances logic and creativity so seamlessly, but Dayoung does it with authenticity, energy, and purpose.
Her journey brings together the world of technology and business, showcasing that careers don't always have to fit into a single box. And this is exactly the kind of inspiration that we love to showcase here at the Curious XX. This episode is hopefully a reminder that you can pursue your analytical side and creative passions while thriving in both.
This message really hits home for me because it is something that I personally struggle with too. Figuring out how to balance my creative interests with my love for science and technology. So I'm very excited for this conversation and I hope that it resonates with everyone who is watching.
We know that so many of our young listeners are still figuring out their own paths, often feeling like they have to choose between one or the other. And we can't wait to hear more about Dayoung's story, her experiences, her passion, and hopefully spark your curiosity in the process.
So, hi, I'm Dayoung. Thank you so much for having me today on the podcast. And I really appreciate the lovely introduction. You made me sound like way cooler than I actually am. And I just maybe wanted to say that I really love the idea of this podcast and the fact that you guys really, deliver it in reality is amazing. And I'm really happy to be part of it.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
kind
you.
words. Um, so just to get started with the podcast and to get to know a little bit about you, could you please tell us about your family, where you grew up, and what your early life was like? We're curious to understand what experiences shaped you during those early years and eventually understand how that shaped you into the career that you have today.
Okay, so I was born and raised in Korea, pretty typical upbringing. And when I was a kid, there was still some preference for boys in Korean culture as well. So I remember my grandma would sometimes go like, "I wish you were born a boy," but it's not because she didn't love me, but it's just like, wired into their mindset. But luckily, my parents never said things like, girls should act like this way or that. So as a teenager, I think I didn't grow up thinking I'm a girl. So maybe I shouldn't do this or that. So I just loved leading. So I was basically always the class president growing up. And also in college, I led the theater club as a president for 2 years, managing over 100 members. And in hindsight, I think taking on those leadership roles was a huge asset for me. And in college, I actually didn't major in STEM, and rather I studied media communication and business. So, how I ended up working in tech as a product manager was honestly a mix of chance and a following what I just felt right at each moment. And as a student, I never really planned to work in tech or STEM. I just knew I wanted to create a positive impact in the world. And that's why I've worked as a filmmaker and screenwriter, book author, as well as product manager. So to me, there are just different set of ways of serving the purpose.
That's really interesting how, that stereotype of girls and boys actually came from when you were so young. And also how your many experiences of leadership have sort of shaped who you are today. So just a bit more about your life as a student. You studied at Sogang University. So what was your experience like there? And what was your experience like as an exchange student in the US as well?
Yeah, sure. That's a fair question. So it's actually a bit long story, like what was my life at Sagang first. So to answer this, I think I will have to um, maybe I will just start with the reason why I picked my major in media first, and I will, go to the part where what was my experience in the US as an exchange student. So to answer why I chose my major as a media communication, I think I have to take you back to 2013 when I was still a high school student, just like you guys. So one day I randomly came across a movie on TV called When We Leave. And I would say that it's a really powerful film about owner-based violence towards women in a Turkish immigrant family. So the main character is a woman who escapes from her abusive husband, and she goes back to her parents' house with her son. But because of the extreme culture belief, underlying in her family, they see her as a disgrace in a way. And in the end, she is killed by her own brother. So as a young girl watching the film, I was literally devastated, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for days. And I felt like no woman anywhere in the world should ever have to go through the same, something like that, right? And to me, film felt like a powerful way to move people and raise awareness. So its message and visuals and sound all come together. So that's when I knew I wanted to create something meaningful through media. So I chose to major in media communication in my college. And at the time, I thought computer graphics was the future of the film industry. And I dreamed of working at a company like Disney or Weta Effects, creating beautiful 3D films. So I took a gap semester from a school to learn 3D modeling, skill using Maya. And I also interned at a company that owned a global IP, which had Baby Shark series. I'm not sure if you ever heard of it. So yeah, back then it was the only company in Korea that had a full 3D animation studio. And while I was working there, I just got the chance to do some marketing related tasks by random chance. I created a global music content that featured their IP characters and linked the viewers to the newly launched online store. That project ended up generating real revenue, which I really enjoyed at the end of the day. So I looked it up again while I was preparing for this interview, and that video now has over 4.3 million views, which is like cool, right? So
Mm.
that whole experience pulled me in a lot. So also I realized that guiding users through a marketing funnel, starting from getting them interested and encouraging them to be more engaged, felt very similar to how film persuades the audience. And since I've always cared more about what the film is trying to say rather than how artistic it may look, I found that marketing very exciting. It just clicked for me, and I thought, oh hey, I might actually be good at this. So at that point, I was already heading into my senior year of college, but I just decided to start a second major in business anyway because I wanted to learn more. So I ended up staying at the university for 5 years overall because I had the double major, but business major turned out to be a good fit for me, and I really enjoyed it. So I was able to graduate like summa cum laude in just a year and a half for business major. So regarding my exchange program, it was only about 4 months actually, but it was pretty an eye-opening experience for me because I would say I had been a pretty typical Korean student before. In Korea, we are taught that humility is a virtue. And, on top of that, we have a pretty homogeneous culture. So in that kind of culture, if you're being assertive or very confident, people might see you as not humble or as someone who doesn't really blend well into your group. But in the US, I found that students were very confident in expressing themselves and also their opinions. So I actually felt like I fit in well in that type of culture, which um, actually led me to, find a job in a global company, which I'm working for now. And I really like this diversity, and it feels so natural to me. I feel more myself, being in this type of diversity.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point because when I moved here to Korea, the culture was very different. I was it took me some time to adjust to the culture. I mean, obviously, I'm really enjoying it now. Um, but yeah, I totally understand your point about the freedom of communication that you might have felt in the US. Um, so I know you spoke about what you studied as a business major and as a communications major, but what exactly was that experience like? What did you study in the communication major?
Oh, okay. So the communication major, it was mainly about they had four tracks if I recall. So one was like journalism and the other like how to, write the articles as a journalist. And the other was about the theater. So that part is where I got pulled into leading a theater group in my community. And I also remember there was a marketing track as well. And then I especially really like the theater one and the marketing track. So I think I chose many selective topics from those tracks. And yeah, and marketing has a very strong link to, business administration in a way. So it was actually, in the hindsight, it was a very natural move for me to shift it to the business major, I would say.
Great. So you've given us a very thorough overview of what led you to choose your majors throughout your education. But growing up, did you ever imagine yourself working in tech?
No, not at all, actually. So, like I mentioned earlier, I've just, followed what felt right in each moment. So I also feel like it really gives you a sense of freedom to have and also leave some, flexibility when it comes to pursuing your bigger dreams. So you don't really need to define yourself as a fixated identity, is what I believe, because sometimes really unexpected opportunities really come along your way. And even yourself sometimes does not know what you're capable of yet. So
Yeah, I think I really relate to that because I have so many diverse interests and sometimes I don't really know exactly what I want to pursue. So having seen your career path has been very interesting to me and um I think that it's really inspiring to see that you can do so many things and you don't have to be limited to just one. So we want to know about how you sort of transitioned your career towards tech. So could you please walk us through how your career started after you graduated from university?
yeah, sure. So my shift into tech wasn't something I planned, from the start. So just to emphasize, and after I added a second major in business, I spent about a year and a half fully immersed in the field for a while. And after that, I wanted to become an expert in marketing strategy. So right after the graduation, I joined a company named E-Mart as a marketer. Maybe like for those of who might not be so familiar with the E-Mart, E-Mart is one of the biggest retail companies in Korea. It's kind of like Walmart in the US, and they actually acquired Walmart Korea and eBay Korea back in the days. And it also owns multiple brands and businesses, including e-commerce platforms and Starbucks Korea and hotel chains and more. So working there basically meant that I would have a chance to experience different types of marketing, sometimes involving even multiple companies under the same umbrella. So I really liked that. And I got to analyze the market, understand customer behavior, and also build strategies for our brands. But after 6 months of, those building strategies, I started to feel like, hey, maybe I want something more tangible as an output. I didn't just want to just make a proposal, but rather I just wanted to actually build things. I was a junior anyway, so I really want to see, how things are rolling in the real field. And lucky for me, eMart was going through a very big digital transformation around the time. And there was diverse opportunities to take on building mobile app products as a product manager, and I volunteered. So after that, I spent about 3 years growing our app, like mobile app, and I eventually became the founding PM for the company's flagship offline payment product. And that's the beginning of how I really, started my career in tech.
Wow, that's quite a journey. And I think it's great that, over time you really understood yourself and what you actually wanted out of your career better, and that helped you shape your own path. I think that's great. So, just a little bit more about your role. What exactly do you do as a product manager at an e-commerce company? And can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day experience?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And to be very honest with you, the role of a PM can be very different depending on the company and the domain. So I will just share what it has been like for me, based on my personal experience. So I think each morning, we as a team start with a Scrum meeting where we check in with the engineers on how our sprint is going and what's the progress and what blockers we're facing. And after that, it's a lot of meetings. And some are about clarifying product requirements for new features that we are building for this quarter. And while others are about fixing issues in products that are already live. So depending on the day, I'll be talking to my engineers, my data scientists and data analysts, UX, UI designers, and also operation teams. And sometimes I would also work with finance team to ensure our product aligns with the company's financial goals. And also documentation is a big part of the job because you cannot just have the meetings and just leave it there because a few weeks later you will just forget what was said, right? So there are tons of projects happening at once. So I think keeping good records really helps us stay on track as a team so that we don't really lose the direction.
That's it sounds like you have a lot of meetings every day and such varied ones. I wanted to know because a lot of our parents work at these corporate jobs and they have these fancy job role names, but we only vaguely know what they mean. So could you please explain what exactly a product manager does? I mean, you told us about your day-to-day experience and what you do, but overall as a career and where that takes you in the future.
Okay. I think it totally makes sense that you feel like sometimes the job description itself, is vague because, like as I said earlier, like even within the same company, the job can look very different depending on the team and the essence of the product maybe, and even maybe the stage of the product that it's in, right? So I think it's fair understanding that you find many of the job title as like vague. And I would just say, I don't know how to put it in general, but maybe a product manager, it's someone who defines the roadmap for a product and which is what we're going to do and why. And then we need to work with a lot of different teams to actually make it happen. But like maybe I will just elaborate a bit more with the examples. So I told you that there could be a bunch of varieties as working as a product manager. So for example, if you're working on a product that has just launched, your focus might be on getting users. But if you're working on a product that's already established, your goal might shift to making money or cutting cost. So those kind of business metrics can vary really depending on what stage you are. So I think that's why people really cannot really put in one sentence of what product manager do.
Okay, I think that you put it very simply. I get the essence of what your role is. So just to understand what kind of skills you use. So do you think that you use more technical skills, more analytical skills, more communication skills?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think there are two things that I would like to highlight. So the first one is logical thinking. Of course, that is, heavily linked to using analytical communication and stuff. So as a PM, I think your decisions need to be based on solid reasoning. So this means that, of course, this also includes understanding data and also having good production intuition sometimes on top of your understanding on the user behavior and domain knowledge. So I think that's that. And the second one I want to highlight is the sense of ownership. I know this might sound a bit off, but PMs are not the one who's coding, right? we have engineers who is like the best experts in that front, but your job as a PM is to make sure the product delivers results. So there are no strict boundaries to the roles, I would say. So for example, if you're a product manager in an early stage startup, the line between product manager or marketer or salesperson, I feel like the boundary could be very blurred, right? You just do whatever it takes to grow the product. So I think it's really important to reflect on your role and responsibilities as a PM and which role you need to pursue at each stage and be willing to expand your role when needed for the team.
Yeah, those are like some tangible skills that you've told us that are actually something that people who are looking to be a product manager or are looking to pursue a STEM career might actually want to look to build in the future. And previously, you also mentioned that your role involves working closely with engineers, data scientists, and UI UX designers. So we wanted to know, what is that collaboration like, and how do you sort of work in these cross-functional teams, and how do you bridge the gap between the various subject knowledge that you might have?
Mm, yeah. So people you mentioned, like engineers, data scientists, and designers, I would say they are really the core of any tech company because they are the ones who actually build a product. So of course, I would say PMs are also a part of makers, but if you looked at it like a spectrum, engineers and designers are focused on building the solution, while PMs are more about defining the problem and enabling the solution to happen. So let's say I will work with an engineer to figure out the best technical solution. So good engineers would not only think of the technical aspects, but they will always come up with the business aspects and also how things will work in the actual world operations. So that's where a lot of great collaboration happens between PMs, operations, and engineers. And also, right now, I work in algorithm optimization sector. So I collaborate closely with my data scientists as well. So we talk about what kind of model performance that product needs, and then the data scientist would be building actual model to meet those goals. And also, we have UI UX designers whose focuses is to build an intuitive user experience for our end users. So overall, it's a collaboration and team effort to build a product. And regarding your second question, and how do I manage to talk to those technical people without my coding background? So I think I have like two ways to share with you. So one is through experience. So there's a Korean saying that goes something like, even a dog at a school will start reciting poetry after 3 years. I know it sounds weird, but it means that you can learn by working in the field. So basically, if you stick around and if you maybe pay attention, I think you will start to get the hang of it, right? As time goes by. And even though I didn't understand something like at the first glance, I would ask questions to my colleagues, a lot of questions. And of course, I would also Google like crazy. And the second way of learning is, of course, through active learning. So I will look for books and online courses as well that help me understand things, the basic concepts of technical backgrounds. And there's a very, interesting book named The Engineer Said It Can't Be Done Again. And this book is pretty popular. So I think the popularity of the book really shows how many people without an engineering background are trying to bridge the gap with those people. So I was also especially focused on data analysis and also got an SQL certification to understand the basics of how database works. This series of active learning eventually also led me to co-author a book of the data literacy with a good friend of mine who's working as a data scientist in the field.
That's really cool. It's so cool that you published a book as well. Um, yeah, so could you please elaborate on what your book is about, what its purpose is, and maybe explain it like for a younger audience because our podcast is intended for middle school to high school kids. So it would be really nice to hear about what your book is about.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And thank you for asking. So I co-wrote the book with a friend friend of mine, and she's now working at Meta in the US. And it's basically a workbook that walks, the audience through practical frameworks and methods for analyzing real life data in your corporate world and things you can actually use on your job, right? And as a junior PM in tech, I realized that data analysis is really important. But when I was starting out, I really didn't know where to begin. So I did a lot of trial and errors and figure things out the hard way, I would say. So me and my friend were just wanted to create a book that would help others who are facing the similar challenges as we did. So that's the purpose of the book. So I would say it's not mostly for students in their middle school or high school, but it's more focused on practical knowledge and approaches you can take as in your early careers.
That's amazing. I think that your book, will be very helpful to people who are starting out. And as you said, a very practical resource to help them out as well. So, apart from that, are there any other exciting projects or features that you're working on or that you have worked on that you're really, really proud of and that you want to share with us today?
Okay, I'm happy that you asked the question. And one of the projects that I'm most proud about as a product manager is a payment product that I built back at E-Mart. So this was made during the peak of COVID, where when people hated face-to-face human interaction, right? So, but at the time, there were tons of ongoing marketing promotions to ensure that people are coming back to our offline store. So there were credit card discounts, there were coupons, there were loyalty programs, and more, right? So our customers at Amart had to ask the cashier things like, did I get all of my discounts right? Which made the checkout process longer for a single customer. And the longer each person took, the longer the whole line will get. And that made people even more reluctant to go to eMart. This vicious cycle was happening back at the COVID phase. And we saw this shift and thought, what if we could make the entire payment process contactless and faster and stress-free? So we created a product called Pay, a payment system that packed everything into a single scan. So coupon, points, and payments, and even promotional events were there. So you didn't really have to fumble with your phone or talk to the cashier to ask, to make sure that if you got all your discounts, and just scan it and you will just leave the counter in 5 seconds. So as a result, it shortened the average checkout time by more than 30 seconds per person. And it also helped shift customers from the staffed checkout to the automated, self-checkout, because it is much more easier and there's no need for them to ask in person, which eventually saved operational costs for the company too. So we ended up boosting our net promoter score in the payment sector, which is gauging how much they liked our product and how much they would like to refer this product to their friends or family. And it became one of the most customer loved product, that year. So it was my very first big PM experience as a starter with a company-wide initiative. And it really opened the door for me to want to get one more step into the tech world.
That's really impressive. Yeah, one of my favorite things about Korea is like the auto checkout, because you don't have to talk to anyone. Um, yeah, and the ones at Emart are like really great. Hearing about your experiences has been so great. We want to now shift the discussion towards more towards the gender imbalance in the tech field and in the working environment in general. So there's also been a lot of discussion about how there's gender imbalance, not just in workplace culture, but also in education, all the way to when you're working. So in your experience, what do you think are some of the biggest factors that might dissuade girls or young women from pursuing a tech career? And what do you think we can do to change that?
Um, yeah, I think one of the biggest blockers is simply the lack of role models, to simply put it. So, we often discover our interests and talents through small moments, right? especially when we're young. It could be a small suggestion from our teacher or a parent, or even just watching someone you look up to. But for girls, I feel like the roles and talents we're expected to pursue still feel pretty limited in a way. So I remember watching a video on YouTube. Maybe it was a decade years ago. So it was the name of the video is Run Like a Girl. Have you seen it before? Okay,
Yeah,
if
I
not, I
think
really
so.
recommend looking it up because that's amazing. So in the video, adults, including both women and men, were asked to demonstrate what it means to run like a girl. And most of them kind of ran in a silly, weak way. And even a young boy did the same. But when actual young girls were asked the same question, they just ran full speed and our arms pumping. And then those girls are once more asked what they thought it meant to run like a girl. And they said, to run as fast as you can. The video stuck with me at the time. And it's why I think media like this podcast are so meaningful. And I especially love the name, The Curious Excess. I think it's so clever and empowering. So, yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, I believe media and culture have such a strong impact on how we see ourselves as women. So, we really need more stories and more visibilities, and maybe more women in leadership as well as them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that role models, media representation, and like you said, just those small things, small influences, especially for people who are growing up and still finding their path, those things are so important. So we wanted to ask you about if you've ever been the only woman in the room and how you dealt with that, because a lot of us are still too young to actually have experienced that sort of professional setting where you're one of the only females there. So did you ever experience that?
Yeah, I would say I have been there. And in hands-on roles, you would see more women, but once you start getting into the leadership level, I think it's mostly men in the room. So I also think that's still the result of where the industry was 10 or 20 years ago when it was even less for women to enter tech. But I believe it's getting better and it should get better, especially with more young, talented women like you guys. So as for me, how do I dealt with that? I think I just try to do my best at work. I try to just show up as the most confident version of myself without the boxing myself being a woman in the room. And I also feel a kind of sisterhood when I meet other women in the workplace because I know you get it. You're out there doing your best too. And there's a bit of sisterhood in that, even though we don't say it out loud.
Yeah, and that sisterhood is something that we really felt, especially through this podcast. Every guest that we talk to, every new person that we reach out to, they immediately connect with the issue, um, and they always have something to share about it. Um, so we wanted to ask also, since it's really important to have women in the tech field, could you please shed some light on why you think it's important to have more females in the world who are building tech products? Um, and also, so like for example, I don't know if you've seen this. There's a book that I read in which there was a statistic about how car seats are made specifically for men. Um,
Oh,
and most of the road accidents that car seats are tested on, like the seat belts are tested on, are for men and not for women. Um, so that's why many of the accidents that happen, they're not really effective in preventing accidents for women. Um, so yeah, based on this, why do you think it's important to have more women who are in tech building these tech products?
oh wow, I really liked your example of the car sheet, that is shaped to fit into the man's body because originally I was about to say that honestly, I don't think that this is just about tech, but we would just need more women in every part of the professional world. But your example just, remind me of a story that, like we are living in the era of AI. And, AI, they use the input data to, create their answers and their logic. And because there are so many biased input, like man being more professional, in the media, or man being in the leadership position more often, they would be, the answer of the AI would still be biased, is what I read. And for example, let's say there's a company who is trying to recruit a, talented member as their founding member. And because they put their, their prospective candidates resume in their system that utilize the AI on the backgrounds, they would value men higher than women because they think that they're more professional for no reason. So I think your example perfectly matches that kind of situation that I just described. And in that front, I totally agree that we have to make sure that women are engaged more in building the technical problem, because that will be an actual problem,
Yeah. So, in order to engage women more and to inspire them more, you spoke about the importance of role models. So, was
Mhm.
there any role model for you who really inspired you through your journey in STEM and in tech?
Yeah, totally. So, at my previous company at E-Mart, I worked with a female leader who had come from the gaming industry. So she was my manager for about 3 years. And she not only gave me many opportunities to grow as a product manager, but she's still someone I go to for advice about life and career in general. And because I learned the leadership directly from her in my early stage of career, it was pretty easy for me to picture myself in a leadership role, maybe 10 years down the line. And I do believe that that's the power of having a mentors and role models in your life.
Yeah, it's really important to have someone to look up to. And it's really great that you have someone to go to whenever you need help. Um, so based on your experience as a working woman in STEM, how are working women, specifically in STEM, but also in general, perceived in Korean society? And how has this maybe affected your professional journey?
Hmm. I think it really depends on the industry and roles, because generally speaking, I found more women in product management or data analysis, while I see less women in, engineering or data science. So I feel like it's still very male dominated field. Um, One thing I've noticed is that um, when you're working with people in real life, emotional connection matters a lot. So people naturally try to find some common ground, I believe, and they maybe build a sense of familiarity. So, let's say we're in the US, and even in the diverse countries like US, we know that US is called as melting pots in terms of cultures because there's so many different people out there. But even there, people often form affinity groups like Asian groups, K groups, or Indian groups, right? And I don't think it's because they are trying to exclude others, and it's just like human nature. We just gravitate toward people with things in common. So that translates into the work life experience. If you're the only woman in a room full of men, that dynamic can feel very different from you. So it's not necessarily the intentional exclusion, but it could be just sometimes as simple as, not being invited to a guy only dinner or hangout. And that's why I think it's really important for women to intentionally support each other through mentorship and sharing opportunities and simply just lifting each other up if there's any opportunity. And I recently, I think in Korea, there are some conferences like Superwoman Conference and Women in Power. So those are spaces where women can come together and talk about life and work. And I do think that's such a positive step forward that we're moving into.
That's really interesting. That perspective that sometimes we're not, we don't need to exclude each other. We just want to feel safe in our comfort zone with people that we share similarities with. And then, yeah, as you said, the question is how do you go break those barriers and try to form a community with all women, regardless of their nationality, their culture, where they're from, so we can really create that network of women. That's really good. So now we want to ask you a bit more about, as someone who has a lot of experience in STEM, do you think that there are any common misconceptions about STEM that you would like to bust for people who are looking to pursue STEM careers?
Okay, I love this question. And maybe I would say for someone like me, to work in STEM, uh, the notion that you have to be an engineer or a data guy is a myth that I just want to, challenge. So I believe that's not true. So for example, I'm much more interested in business impact than in writing codes. And there are so many roles in tech that need different kinds of talents. So for example, let's say you're interested and passionate about HR, and you can just help shape company culture for tech industry, or maybe recruit amazing talents out there because it's also a critical part of building a great product in the tech industry. So maybe because you didn't major in computer science, or maybe because math and science weren't your favorite subjects in school, does not mean that STEM career isn't for you. I think you should not limit yourself into a box or boundaries in terms of that.
Yeah, I think your career truly showcases that you don't need to be put in a box and you can do whatever you want to pursue. Um, and you can also pursue things outside of a STEM career if you're interested in those things, which is super important. Um, so what advice would you give to younger students who are curious about this field and who are feeling unsure or intimidated to pursue it?
I believe it's totally natural to feel unsure about your future because especially when you haven't had a chance to try things out. So how could you possibly know what you're good at or passionate about if you haven't experienced it in a company, right? So in my case, I just followed what felt right at the time. I just listened to my inner voice, and that really helped me really fully commit to what I was doing at the moment because I chose the path. So instead of trying to maybe perfectly plan out your career or optimize your life, I think it's more important to try out different things as much as possible and be open to making mistakes and just learn along the way because that's the perk of being a student and being young, right? And I really like there's a saying that I really like, which is the more you wander, the wider your world becomes. And maybe you will try STEM and decide later that wasn't for you. And that's okay, right? Or maybe you've never been so interested in STEM before, and all of a sudden, one day it might just click with you. Because yeah, if you because life can sometimes surprise you. So if you feel interested in something, even if you don't have a logical reasoning like behind that, just go for it, is what I just wanted to share with the young girls.
That's great. Yeah, I think that there's so much pressure for so many preteens and teens today to know exactly what they're going to do, exactly what major to apply for. And you're right, there's just so much we're not being exposed to yet. There are careers that are being created and that don't even exist yet, but they will maybe in 5, 10 years. So you're completely right. You can be flexible. No one has to be afraid. So just for high school students who are looking to go into a career in tech, at least for now, what skills and careers what skills do you think they need to develop or activities they should do just to prepare them better for that career?
Um, I'm not sure if this is the kind of answer that really fits to the theme of your podcast, to be honest. But I think there are others who can give better advice than I can regarding which skills that you have to pursue to be in the tech industry. But I just want to say a different one. Instead of focusing only on technical skills, I would encourage students to just think big and ask questions like, what kind of life do I want to live? And what drives me? because at the end of the day, tech is just a powerful tool. So you might want to pause and ask yourself, am I truly interested in tech itself? Or am I more passionate about a bigger goal that I want to achieve through tech? So that kind of reflection will become more important as we're entering the era of AI, right? Some experts even say that we're just few years away from hitting the singularity. And even the Jeffrey Hinton, he's called as the godfather of AI, and he's a Nobel Prize winner. And he just admitted that he doesn't even know what's coming next. And I've seen a YouTube video that he's recently interviewed, and his advice to younger generation was learn how to be a plumber. So yes, I think your passion for tech is incredibly valuable, and I truly give that. But I don't feel like don't feel like tech has to really define your life purpose, or you have to marry tech. So if I were a tech native teenager, just like you are, I think I would spend more time thinking about what kind of impact I want to make with those skills, especially in this era, rather than focusing on, oh, what kind of skills that I want to learn, because AI will do it, better than you, at some point. And that's obvious for sure, right?
Yeah, I think that advice is so relevant, especially in today's world, with AI, and with everything that's happening. I think it's really important to keep that in mind. Um, so moving on to the last question that we have for you today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with young listeners? Maybe something you wish someone had told you when you were their age,
Yeah, sure.
sort of like an older sister.
And firstly, I wish I hadn't discouraged any of the young girls who is so interested in, pursuing their tech careers, because I really mean it, right? I do want them to, follow their heart and do whatever they want to do in the professional world. But anyway, so because I really the purpose and the concept of your podcast really resonated with me. There's one perspective that really helped me personally, that so I really want to share it with you. So on a social level, being a woman is a big part of my identity, like even to me. And I do believe that it's important for women in the professional world, especially to support one another. But on a personal level, what we can do, and I want you to know, is maybe you don't have to over identify with being a woman. And I don't mean to ignore the, existing inequality that still exists, not at all. So what I mean is, um, we carry many layers of identity, and our sex and gender is just one of them. And because my identity is a set of layers, sometimes I might be in the majority of a group, and other times I might be in the minority in the group. So let's say, you come from a low income background, for example. If you only define yourself by that, it can make you feel small or discouraged, right? So rather than, thinking that, oh, because I'm coming from the low income background, like I cannot do anything like XYZ. So I would just rather find the best version of yourself that gives you the most confidence and empowerment, because that's going to also really contribute you to reach your goals as a woman, is what I believe. So like being a woman and having a self-identity and reflection as a, social identity is totally fine and good. I love that. But at the same time, you don't have to be discouraged or feel small being a woman, and just forget about yourself as a woman and just be yourself and be confident, is what I want to say.
Wow, that's such great advice. And, I would have never thought about it that way. We just want to thank you for coming here and for sharing your perspective and your experience with us in such a um, eloquent and such a concise way. So I love how you started with um, your your influences at a young age and the aspect of Korean culture, like you said, how humility is a virtue and how these influences sort of shaped your path, and also how other influences like film and media shaped your journey in STEM and the choices you made in terms of your education. When we spoke about your career, I love how you focused on logical reasoning and how you had to undergo a lot of independent inquiry to bridge the gap, as you said, and to really collaborate with a lot of different people. Like you said, your career is interdisciplinary. And I think that as the world progresses, a lot of STEM careers are becoming interdisciplinary, and we really have to learn to connect with other people in order to create something brilliant. Not only a product, but anything at all. Your project about the payment system and how you optimize that process was really great. I think it's such a classic example of how you notice a problem, you think like a product manager, and then you solve the problem, and it just helps so many people's lives. It saves money, it saves time, and that's just great. We really hope that you continue to work on these projects inside STEM and out beyond STEM that really continue to inspire you. I think for us, the main learning that you kept reinforcing would be to do what feels right. And I think that's so important to just follow your intuition because, like I said, there's so much pressure nowadays for a 15-year-old to know exactly what they want to do. But just to follow your heart and do what makes you feel happy and makes you feel confident, to understand that you are not only a woman or you're not only something else. You're a nuanced person with a nuanced identity. That's just so important for any young girl looking to pursue STEM. We're really grateful that you could make the time to speak with us today. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I thank you again for having me. And that was such a perfect recap of the discussion. I love that.
Yeah, thank you so, so much for joining us today. We are truly grateful for all your time and for all of the valuable insights and advice that you shared. And we really hope that everyone who has watched this has learned something new and feels inspired to explore and pursue their own paths in STEM. Until next time.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much.